he'll slit your throat and cut off your big toe. I'll tell you, he'll make you smile from ear to ear.
He may be an award-winning, world-renowned musician who's written #1 songs and released several successful albums, but Steve Poltz had humble beginnings, and Mike Halloran had a hand in launching his success.
One needs a new head, it's always catching cold, so I was playing at an open mic night, and Halloran happened to be there. And afterwards, after I played, he came up and said, "Who's your A&R? Who's your A&R?" And I didn't even know what A&R meant.
It stands for Artists and Repertoire, talent scouts who discovered musicians like Poltz and his band, the Rugburns.
After we got our first CD, I'll never forget how excited I was. I called up Halloran, and the cool thing about Mike is his phone's always going off, so you can always call him. And he said, "All right, get over here right now. Let me see the CD." So I drive it over there, and he looks at it and he says, "Here's what you got to do. Leave me a CD." And I really thought that it should be this song on the CD called Holliston Street, which is a really slow song. He picks this song called Hitchhiker Joe. Pick up, Hitchhiker Joe. He'll slit your throat and cut off your big toe.
And before Poltz knew it, Hitchhiker Joe became one of the most popular songs on 91X.
I'll never forget driving down the road and hearing it on the radio and looking over and seeing, I think it was like a Jeep of 4 girls in a Jeep at a light pulled up next to me, and it was on, and they're going, "Don't pick up Hitchhiker Joe." And I looked over at them, and they were all going, "Bump, bump, 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 bump." And I just looked at them, and I was shocked that people would even know a song and the power of radio.
Poltz values Halloran for his professional insight, but even more for his friendship.
He's just always been there for me. I really like the guy. I like his patience. I just like his opinion on life. I've spent so many nights sitting in late night diners with him because I don't think that guy sleeps. Like, he'll stay up till 3 in the morning and we'll make a weird video, or we'll be working on something, just having fun, discussing life, discussing his kids, discussing family, discussing relationships, and he's been really helpful to me. And I love the way you sashay in the room.
So tell me what the music atmosphere was like in San Diego in those days. San Diego gets this rap as being, oh, laid back, surfer dudes, we don't care about anything, biggest small town in America. But it did have, and still does have, as evidenced by you being here today, a lively and alive alternative music scene. What was it like when you got here? Were you surprised by it?
Since coming from Detroit had a huge club scene, and I wanted to find the club scene here. And I remember stumbling out to different bars to try to find, and there wasn't really a club scene. The discos were happening, and they were playing tons of, Simple Minds and Oingo Boingo and the dancier side of the music that we were playing. But the live music scene hadn't quite yet come to its fruition yet. Soma hadn't existed at that point, hadn't started. Casbah, not at that point. The Pink Panther was just kind of getting rolling back in those days. But it was kind of weird, but there was inklings of things that were happening. Certain little clubs were popping up here and there, and I was running into local musicians and meeting people that were basically musicians that were hanging out in town. Back in '86, and eventually in like '87, '88, '89, a little scene started kind of like developing, where there were bands that I was running into and meeting, and we finally put a local music show on the air, a full-time local music show on the air at 91X, because originally it was one slot inside of another show.
Right.
And then we convinced Marco Collins to just take that one slot and expand it and play tons more of these bands.
But eventually you move up the ladder there and start directing, really, taking that station in another direction, the direction that you'd always wanted to go in.
Well, it wasn't so much in a different direction. It was just like I put the pedal to the metal, basically. We were a legendary radio station when I got there. It was legendary from day one, in essence.
Right.
And when I got there, I suppose part of it was I was watching this local music scene become bigger and bigger. And so we took bands that some people had heard about in San Diego, and we kind of put a big spotlight on them, got the microscope out, and people were, wow, these guys aren't bad, So we started taking, local music seriously.
And how'd you find it, Mike? Because, I mean, you don't sit in a room like this all day and just have people, send you stuff. To find the people that you found.
Well, people do send you stuff all day.
Yeah,
but what happens is it all comes down to communication. It's that whole one-on-one thing. It comes down to just talking to the musicians out there and realizing what they're about, getting their vibe, listening to their songs, going to see their shows live. That's where the whole local music scene, in essence, kind of started blowing up because we started reflecting that.
Yeah, and that scene started to take off where you were getting more Java Joes and clubs like that where you could actually see acts that weren't just cover bands.
Correct. It was like we were looking for somebody who kind of blew our minds. We went to see them play live. And then the idea was then to try to capture that, which is hard to do a visual thing, onto the radio. And some of the bands, made it huge that we started playing, back then. Jewel, probably the best example.
Yeah. Where'd you find her? Coffee House?
Lou Niles was doing the local music show at 91X at the time. And he had basically asked me if I'd seen her play live yet. And I said no, I hadn't. He suggested I go down there and check her out. She was playing this tiny coffee shop on, well, now it's like a construction thing, but there's a little coffee shop there called the Interchange. And she'd started up at Java Joe's up in Poway and came down and started doing a residency there. And while she was doing her residency, she would, in the daytime, she'd go out and flyer the beaches. She would like go, hey, come and see me play, come and see me play. And she would like take her flyers out and, she's a cute girl. And half the surfers would be like, okay, I'm going to go see this girl play. And so people would start, coming into this coffee shop to watch her play. And she was an amazing singer, a pretty accomplished guitar player. She played on probably the crappiest guitar I'd ever seen in my life. She'd have to retune in between certain songs, and it was just, almost painful sometimes because, the machine heads weren't exactly the best machine heads in the world. I tried to buy a guitar at one point. She goes, no. Didn't want to accept help from anybody. She was at that point living in her truck, in her van, her V-dub van that she used to drive around, and it was just really weird because I saw her and thought, you know what, she's really unbelievably special. And she came by and started playing live on the air a couple times.